and welcome to today's session. I'm your host, Angelica, Malin, and I'll be taking you through this session with a range of exciting, dynamic speakers and entrepreneurs. Trees and forests are one of the two planetary lungs, but still deforestation is ongoing. The first major deal of COP26 promised to end and reverse deforestation by 2030, but there are still many viable solutions that can be put in place today to become tree positive. First, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Doreen Asumang-Yeboah. Doreen is a natural resource governance practitioner and a developmental change facilitator. She has a degree in natural resource management and masters in developmental policy and planning from University in Ghana. For over a decade, Doreen has been involved in managing and implementing development partner and Government of Ghana projects with wide scopes and varied stakeholders. She's also the co-founder of Rights Advocacy Initiatives Network, a local NGO that seeks to promote inclusivity in the sustainable management of Ghana's resources to enhance the well-being of people that depend on them. Welcome, Doreen, to the stage.
Bonjour à tous. Je suis Doreen Asumang-Yeboah. Je viens du Ghana. That's all I can say. Thank you very much for having me on this global platform to share with you what we do back in my country, Ghana. It's a great privilege and an honor to be here with you. I would start by saying that over 1 billion people globally depend on our forest resources to some extent. And back in my country, Ghana, we have about 60% of our population depending on forest resources by way of their livelihoods. This is because some of them depend on exploitation of timber resources directly. Some exploit non-timber forest products for their lives. Some depend on forests as their source of water because most of our forest reserves serve as water sources for the rivers and streams that we have around. We have people dependent on the forest for medicines, some dependent on the forest for spices. And so the forest presents an embodiment of a lot of things for people. People depend on forest for their economic life, for their social lives, for their cultural, spiritual, and even ecological lives. Unfortunately, we are not treating the forest the way it's supposed to be. This is because we look around us and other issues are on the top agenda of our global debates compared to that of forests. Let's just cast our minds back to what happened recently. We saw the world seeing a pandemic, the SARS-CoV-19, and all nations around the world amassed resources, technologies, everything to arrest the situation. How long haven't we known about deforestation? What have we done so far about deforestation? This is a call to us all. Since the late 1980s, there has been efforts and calls from development partners as well as scientists to involve people, communities in the management of our forest resources. And just recently, last year at Glasgow, world leaders called for involvement of people in the development and management of our forest resources. Aside that, the IPCC reports also indicate that communities are very critical in the management of our forests and natural resources. Why is it so? That is because communities are close to the forest resources. And by way of their proximity to the resource, they have a daily interaction with it. And so they are better placed to protect the resources for us. They also have an embodiment of indigenous knowledge that they can use to complement what scientific knowledge can offer. Communities also have this direct dependency on forest. And so once they see the forest, they see their livelihood and their existence. So they're a better place to be able to take care of the forest resources for us. How do we get them involved in the management of our forest resources? The forest is a complex sector. It has laws around them. It has rules and regulations. There are a lot of things in there. We need to equip them with the knowledge. We need to equip them with the resources to do so. Aside that, we need to get them on board. We need to facilitate their integration into the management of the resource. Unfortunately, most of the decisions that we take about natural resource management are taken at the higher level, sometimes at the global level by the elite class, ignoring the people down at the community level, the people who are rightly sitting beside the forest and should be a part of it. How are we changing the situation? We need to enable access of these communities to resources, to financial resources, technological resources that would enhance their ability to change the situation around them. And that is where we come in as change makers. By referring to me, I'm talking about ClientEarth and Rights and Advocacy Initiatives Network. For those of you who may not know, ClientEarth is a law and charity organization that works globally, but works through local civil society or local NGOs to implement the activities that they do. And because they are lawyers, they mostly work by using the law. Our organization, Rights and Advocacy Initiatives Network, on the other hand, is a local organization based in Ghana. And for us, we want to use other resources to change what we see around us. We want human-centered approaches, people-centered approaches, and innovation that will change the situation around us. That is what we do down there. We want to change the deforestation trend. We want to change the situation about forest degradation. And so that is what we are trying to do for now. And I want to take us or walk us through some of the things we do in my country to change the forestry sector back there. First and foremost, we support communities to be able to benefit from forest resources. How do we do so? Over the years, communities have been living around forest resources. They have a role to play in the management of this resource that they live close by. But sometimes they are left out in the management, and because of that, they don't have that sense of urgency to protect the forest. They don't even benefit from the resources around them. But there are laws that make provision for them. For instance, the Timber Resource Management Legality Licensing Regulation of 2017, what we call the LI 2254. It has a section 26 which states clearly that communities around forest resources should benefit from a social responsibility agreement with timber exploiters or loggers that will commit to social development of the communities. These communities may not know, and because of that, these loggers take them for granted and do not provide the needed resources to them. So what we do is to break down this law for them to understand, so that when the loggers come in, they are able to engage them meaningfully to assess the benefits that they are supposed to get from the communities. Once they are able to get those benefits, then they can see the essence of having the forest close to them. And so they are involved in protecting the forest resource. We train them to manage and protect wildfires, because wildfires are another source of problem or challenge that we have around our forest resources. Then, after protecting the forest, we help them to also monitor the forest against all infractions and report to the authorities that are being, so that when things are happening that are not going on well, they can report and address the situations because their livelihoods depend on the forest. So I've talked about forest protection over here. Now, we are not just working with communities. A number of civil society and NGOs also work with communities back in Ghana. These civil society organizations also need to understand what is happening around us. Unfortunately, most of the leadership of these civil society or NGOs are males. We don't find women in there because the forestry sector is more of a patriarchal sector. We see just a few females in there. And so some of the decisions that they take there do not necessarily reflect gender. So what we are doing at this stage to make a change in that sector is to integrate what we call gender mainstreaming into a process called the Legal Working Group. The Legal Working Group is a platform of people within the NGO sector in Ghana who are within the forestry and agricultural sector. We come together periodically to be trained on laws to help protect and manage our forest resources well. So whilst they are sitting down, learning about the laws, we also make them understand the essence of gender mainstreaming in the activities that they do. Through that, they are able to plan, budget, and execute gender-sensitive interventions right in the communities that they work with. So there are pictures of a legal working group and a presentation on gender in forest monitoring out there. Then we have gender and women empowerment. We all know that the challenges that we have in the agriculture and forest sector are gendered. The challenges that women face in the agricultural sector are different from what their counterparts faced. And even amongst the women, there are different groups, there are different classes, there are different age groups. And so we do not just box women into one group as women. We go down to employ the intersectionality approach, where we have different categories of women, different categories of men, go down to understand their challenges and try to get targeted interventions to support these people that we are working with. So you can see in the picture a woman with a baby at the back. That is obviously a younger woman. And such a woman will have different challenges compared to an elderly woman who is also a farmer at the community level. We also do capacity building for women in the forestry sector. I've already mentioned that our forestry sector is patriarchal. We have just a few women. But I remember back in school, about a third of the student population in the forestry school were females. And unfortunately, after school, most of them found themselves in other things. So we have a few more. The numbers are still reducing. There are just a few in the sector. How do we encourage their networking? How do we encourage building them up to be able to take roles in the sector that are helpful to them and also to the sector? How do we strengthen them to be competent enough to execute their activities well? So that is the essence of the gender and women empowerment that we do for the forestry sector. We bring these women together, we train them, we educate them on things that are happening around us, about the laws in the sector, how they could be meaningful in their execution of activities, about the ongoing dialogues and debates, the Forest Law Enforcement and Governance and Trade Initiative, the FLECT processes, the EU deforestation regulation. What is happening? How can they, as women in the sector, also understand and contribute to the debates? These are the things that we do. And our activities are not just within the classroom. They are not just confined to the workshop space. We go down to the field. We take the women round to the forest to train them about what is happening. We take them to the timber industry to see and feel what is happening around so that they will have a better understanding of the process to be able to contribute to it meaningfully. What are the benefits of our actions? Through the actions that we are doing, we've been able to influence the civil society fraternity within the Ghanaian society. And so as of now, civil societies are meaningful of gender integration in the work that they do. They look at gender in planning their operations, they look at gender budgeting, and they look at mainstreaming gender in the activities that they do. Communities can also now boast of projects and development that they have achieved from social responsibility agreements. They can now sit down and engage loggers to demand their rights, which previously was not the case. They are also able to integrate more trees on their farms because they know they have a right to the trees that they plant on their farms. They are also aware that when these trees are planted, they are able to sequester carbon. And so the climate change that we are talking about, they have a role to play to abate it, and they are happy to do that. The women in the forestry sector are also better placed, and now they can also contribute to the discussions just like our male counterparts can do. To sum it all, I would say that sustainable forest management is the role for all of us. Governments and policymakers need to do their part by providing the enabling environments. Civil societies are doing our parts. Private sector, investors, entrepreneurs also have a role to play. They may have brilliant ideas, but they need to work in partnership and in collaboration with the other actors to be able to achieve what we want to achieve. 1.5 degrees is attainable, but that can only be done when we come together and work in collaboration with all the partners in the sector. By so doing, we save our environment, we save our planet, we save our forests, and we save our diversity. We talked about biodiversity yesterday. We can achieve that when we work together. And we have started our part of the action. We are doing that back in my country through the assistance and facilitation of ClientEarth, supporting my organization, RAIN. You can also do yours. Tomorrow might be too late. The time to act is now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Doreen, for that compelling speech. I'd now like to call onto the stage Leo Caprez and Christophe Sowell, and we will be discussing this topic further. sunny. Leo Caprez is a serial impact entrepreneur and investment practitioner focusing on climate and innovation. For the last 15 years, he has had several leadership roles and board roles in sustainability and regenerative economy. He is the co-founder of Brainforest, which operates as a venture studio, forests and climate, and delivers scalable solutions to the climate crises through various impact ventures. Christophe Sowell created Terres de Café in 2009 in Paris. He is a pioneer in the field of specialty coffees in France. Today, they have 7 shops in Paris and delivers daily to more than 500 professional customers in France and around the world. From the start, he devoted his time to sourcing forest coffees, particularly in Ethiopia, and has been traveling to producing countries, forging long-term links with producers, and encouraging the production of quality-growing coffee in agroforestry, the cornerstone of sustainability in the coffee sector. Thank you both so much for joining me on stage / in this greenhouse today. So please, can you tell me both, in your own words, a little bit about your work and what inspires you to do it? Yeah, sure.
So you nearly told everything.
Sorry.
So yeah, I found Terres de Café 12 years ago when there were no specialty coffee. Specialty coffee is high quality coffee. And when I created the company, I wanted to do specialty coffee, so high quality coffee, but sustainable. And my job now is half of the time around the world to source coffee. But sourcing coffee means sourcing producer. Because some producer want to go sustainable in quality, which is linked, by the way, and some other don't care. You have specialty coffee on one side, and you have industrial coffee on the other side. And the problem is that industrial coffee is 95% of the coffee sold in the world for now. Specialty coffee arrived, but it's still a small market. Well, so my job is for Terres de Café to source coffee producers and to have long-term relationship with them. So how we going to select the coffee producers? First, the one who are okay to work with us, because it must go in both ways. And then we are trying to understand what is the sustainable strategy of the farm. I will come to forest. So the big sectors we're looking at is the trees, of course, the management of the water, the people, because people must be also a sustainable social sustainability strategy, and in the end, the quality. I should say first the quality, because with no quality you can't have sustainability, because as we all know here, sustainability has a cost. Okay. So let's go back to the trees, because that's the main topics today. There is different way of going sustainable also with trees. The best one is forest coffee. Why? Because first, the natural place, birthplace for coffee is the high mountain of Ethiopia for Arabica. And so the forest, the coffee trees are where they are the best, where they feel the best, is the forest, high altitude, rainforest of Ethiopia. And why this is the best way of growing coffee? Because the value you give to the forest thanks to coffee is better than the value you can get when you're a community in the forest by cutting the trees. So this is the first thing. The trees, as everyone knows here, sorry, I'm a little bit tired, or trap the carbon. And when you know that when you're producing 1 kilo of green coffee, it's 17 kilo of carbon for industrial coffee. Okay? On this 17 kilo, 14 kilo of carbon comes from the farm, from the field. And 80% of this 14 kilo comes from the fertilizer, nitrogen synthetical fertilizer. In forest coffee, you don't need any fertilizer. So 18% of the carbon due to coffee growing is cancelled. I personally think that, but I don't have the data to prove it yet, that forest coffee is carbon positive coffee.
Thank you. That's it. Leo, tell me.
Yeah, so it actually is a perfect segue because we need many of businesses like this that take products from the forest into the market and create a financial value of keeping forests, actually. So we need many of those companies, and that's what we do at Brainforest. It's a venture builder, so that means we create startups that have solutions to the climate and biodiversity crisis. So we look at what is needed for more forests to have more forests for a better climate, and then entrepreneurial solution that actually can scale and have a business model. That's what we do at Brainforest. So it's about innovative, scalable solutions. We all know that we are running out of time and we have to do things at large scale so that we can have a relevant impact. So we need to include innovation, we need to include technology, we need to include indigenous and local wisdom, and this combination actually is what the magic is. So entrepreneurial solution with all the wisdom, technology and innovation. That's what we are building.
How did you find yourself working in this area in particular? How did you find yourself working in this area? How did you end up in this particular area of interest?
Yeah, so I was with WWF before, and the NGO model is very important, and we still need that, and we see that it's not enough. So I was looking at what is actually, growing fast, what is scaling, and it's especially with technology, and it's in the venture space where things are really, there's innovation that then can grow a lot. So I started Brainforest with the intention to take the best of the, let's say, venture world and merge it, marry it with the NGOs. That's what one of our principles is, NGO heart and business mind. So it's really the combination of the two things.
That's it, thank you. Christophe, can you tell me a little bit through your work how you're producing in a way that benefits the local populations and protects the forest at the same time?
Yeah. For local population, we have to understand that specialty coffee market is new. The value of coffee, of green coffee for producer, has fell down continuously for now more than 60 years. Now what we can see with the specialty coffee market, with the people who want to buy quality and are ready to put a little bit more money in their coffee, is that the value of quality coffee is increasing very quickly, very rapidly. So the benefits for the people, for the community, is that they can sell their coffee more expensive than they were doing before. That's what gives a value to the forest. That's why when you're doing coffee on the forest, it's better to do coffee and to stay on your land than to cut your trees or try to escape from your community, go to the city or go in other countries. That's what I see. But there is something very important we have to understand why we say that, is that it's true that we have to find some green, clever and complex, because it's always complex sustainability. It's difficult to talk simply about sustainability, in fact. But the model, the business model, must be a very good business model for the startup, but it must be a very good business model for the producer. That's the key. The key of agriculture, as far as I know, for me, is to give more value to the sustainable product. And we need a lot of effort. It's education, it's knowledge. We need people like what you do. We need really the people to understand that a nice product, a good product, is more expensive than an industrial one. For me, that's the key. So we are trying to communicate like this, but we need the effort of all the people I can see there. It's beautiful, but we need to communicate on this.
What are some of the biggest challenges, as you see them, that we're facing in terms of protecting the forests?
Yeah, I would say the main issue is economics. In most areas globally, it's there is an economic incentive, so there is more money if you cut it down, if you create a monoculture, if you do gold mining. So the biggest issue is that we need to create more economic value with a standing forest through high quality products, so that there is an incentive to keep the forest and not cut it down or reforest areas.
Yes, there is a lot of pressure on forest, a lot of pressure. You have the pressure land because I was in Kenya 2 weeks ago, and the farm is now surrounded by the city. They do resistance, in fact, because the city are growing very, very fast. And what I see in Ethiopia is that big multinational intensive agriculture company are buying lands. They are buying all the land they can to do intensive agriculture. And third, I've just heard that the Ethiopian government does intensive for the producer to buy chemical product, synthetical fertilizer to grow coffee faster and to make more money with the coffee. That's exactly the contrary the farmers have to do. So there is a lot of pressure on forest above the value of the trees, above that. So producing forest for me is two things: conservation in Amazonia, for example, and also we have to imagine all the way possible to keep the forest productive. Because productivity, agriculture, food productivity on the forest, I say once again, but gives a nice and very essential value to the trees.
Thank you so much. So if we think about solutions, obviously ChangeNOW is focused on what can we do around these problems. What are some of the key solutions, as you see them, to protecting the forest?
Yeah, so one thing is that we need markets for those products that come out of the forest. So the nuts, the fruits, the etheric oils, the medicines. There's actually billions of value created just in cancer from rainforest plants, but the money is not flowing back. So first of all, there needs to be the product, find a market, and then the money needs to flow back to the forest. That's kind of the high-level solution that is needed. And then to have that at scale and the speed that we need a lot of innovation, and that's what we are focusing on, to come up with new models, new products, to, as I said before, to create the maximum possible value of a standing forest, so that it's not cut down.
Do you have any solutions that you would add into that?
We need the consumer. For me, it's the key, because we are selling a lot of forest coffee. By the way, the flavor of a forest coffee is unique, because forest coffee means also biodiversity. So this is very alive coffee. It's incomparable. But it's a little bit more expensive. So we need the consumer to appreciate good coffee and be ready maybe to drink less but better. It's very important, and I think it's the same in every kind of food product. We have to learn to know what we are buying, to who we buy to, and appreciate the product as something very precious. We don't need to have 5, 6, 10 cups of sad coffee every day. We don't even need to drink coffee. This is not. You have to eat, you have to drink water to live, but you don't have to drink coffee. What I mean by that is that you don't have to drink sad and industrial coffee. That's what I mean. So 1, 2, 3 cups, each cup of coffee must be a pleasure, not only caffeine. So I think that we need the people. Now, the specialty coffee, I'm talking about what I know, coffee. Specialty coffee, it's 25% of the market in the United States. It's nearly 10% in France, so it's okay. But to go above this, to go farther than this, We need the people to appreciate good coffee, to forget the taste of industrial coffee, the bitterness of industrial coffee, and we need to finish the support of all the people, and I think it's the same for all food products.
Leo, do you have any additional thoughts to share on how the role of consumers in forest protection?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, this morning I had a very tasty acai bowl, which is a fantastic product out of the rainforest. To consciously choose products that are sustainably done, sustainably produced and sourced out of the forest is certainly an important one. And there is the more difficult ones because we use a lot of paper, obviously, and paper products that in some regions of the world also put pressure. But overall, it's chocolate is a huge deforestation driver. So to actually consume well-produced, sustainably produced chocolate, coffee. In the end of the day, yes, everything that is consumed has a huge impact on where it comes from. And there is a lot of products. I mean, I'm coming from Switzerland, so we consume a lot of chocolate. And there is a responsibility with that that we have. And then the other part is, become forest entrepreneurs. Do an internship at Brainforest, come up with new ideas, new products. That would be then, taking even a step further.
You mentioned before about these innovations and solutions. What do you think actually needs to happen on a kind of larger scale and a government scale to actually bring some of these things to fruition and support the initiatives?
You mean on government, you said?
Yeah, what kind of will help accelerate the things that you hope to achieve when you're advising? What will actually help accelerate that? What needs to change?
Yes, government have an important role to play, no question. Right now, my focus is rather on investors. I think if we have the entrepreneurs and the solutions, then we need lots of capital going into those solutions to scale them. Because we don't need to just have in one country, one solution 50 times, but we need to scale this to many, many countries around the globe, because we don't only have the Amazon, we have the whole Congo Basin. There is lots of areas actually where there is a huge threat on the forest, and there's lots of solution needed. There's lots of capital needed to scale those solutions, and there's very, very little capital actually going into those solutions. So that's one of the things I see as a big leverage point now. If there is more interest and appetite on investor side to go in this direction.
Can you also tell me a little bit more about some of the most impactful projects and initiatives that you've launched or advised on within the business?
And maybe one word on that is the Brainforest model itself is quite particular because we are a non-profit venture studio. So we are tax-exempt structure. We take philanthropic capital to build the solution because they need to be long-term and nobody is financing that because we need to take care of biodiversity. It's not just carbon or products. As Christophe was saying before, it has to be done properly. It has to be done with the local communities, as Doreen was saying before. So not just coming in with a great tech solution and then think that everything is perfect. So it needs to be done properly. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. So if we were to kind of fast forward to 2030, what kind of change would you like to see on this topic in terms of forest protection? And also maybe where you'd like to see your business as well.
As I'm concerned, I would like people to drink more forest coffee. The thing is that how you define it, and you come to the label. We still have to work with maybe agroforestry association in France, in Africa. There are some, but just a few words for the public, for the ones who like a good product, is that labels are too often the best friend of a greenwasher in coffee. So my point is to be able to talk simply about a complex thing. The labels are not the solution for me. So I would like, my dream is to have a very independent forest production label, but complex one. You know, going organic is not sustainable, going fair trade is not sustainable, going Rainforest Alliance is a joke when you know what it is, this certification. So my dream is to have something that proves the benefits of the forest product, not only coffee.
You mentioned about labels. Just a point of interest, what should we be looking for on a label or anything to avoid?
This is a good question. The problem with the label is that generally, at the very beginning, it's a good intention. And when you are a multinational company, that you do deforestation to do coffee or some other product, it's very easy to find ways to get the label. You say, oh, okay, I'm organic, certified, but I've deforested 1,000 hectares of forest, so it means nothing. Fair trade was a very good intention at the beginning, and it's kind that this label still exists, but doesn't mean quality, doesn't mean sustainability. It means only that you have a little bit more money when you're part of this label. And who's getting the money? The producer? Well, me, I'm not certain about that. So we should take every label and have an analysis of each label and say, this one, this one. What I noticed is that most of the time, it's a way for big companies to protect themselves and to hide themselves against bad agricultural practices.
I have to say, I do share some of the frustrations of Christophe on the label side. Still, it's go for the labels better than non-labeled. And the good news is that there's lots of the new technology coming, already available, and more coming, which actually allows for more transparency, cheaper, remote sensing with satellites, with drones, to have databases that are run on distributed ledger. So there is a lot of possibility, especially in this space, because trees, they have one geographical location. You can always go back and check if that actually is really there, if the algorithm, if you want, is correct. So there is a huge level of trust that can be built now with modern systems, because they can be checked. Full traceability, all of this frustration that Christophe just shared is because there is lots of money and time and effort going into monitoring, reporting, verification, trying to make sure that everything is going right, and we cannot afford this in the future. I think we need to go for cheap solutions, but well-done solutions to be as objective as possible what's actually happening in the forest, and also accept that some of the things will go wrong. Nowhere else in the whole economy we have the expectation that 100% is perfect, but in those labels we do have that. If there is a story coming out that one of the labels, there is a scandal, the whole label is tainted, and they increase the monitoring, reporting, verification effort. We have insurance for other areas in our lives, in our consumption. We don't have the expectation that everything is 100% perfect. So I think this is one of the things that 2030, if you ask me 2030, we see a lot of technology that is used to create the transparency, to create all of those amazing solutions and traceability of those new products out of the forest, and a bioeconomy, as it's called, with standing forests, so that you have many products coming out of the forest into all of our lives, so that you actually, with your consumption of chocolate, nuts, acai, whatever it is, help the forest and not destroy the forest.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you both so much for sharing your insights with us today.
Thank you.
So next up, I will be speaking with Shubhendu Sharma on the topic of the future of the forests, who will be speaking to us remote from India. Thank you very much. An An industrial engineer by qualification, Shubhendu creates native, wild, self-sustaining forests using afforestation methodology from Japanese scientist Dr. Akira Miwaki. In the past 11 years, Shubhendu and his team have successfully planted 150 forests in 9 countries in some of the most extreme climates and soils. He also teaches at Harvard Graduate School of Design as a guest lecturer and has lectured at several universities, including the University of Columbia and the Indian Institute of Forest Management. Welcome, Shubhendu. There we are. Round. Hello.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us today. First, can you tell me a little bit about the Miyawaki reforestation process and what's special about it?
Well, so the Miyawaki method of afforestation is the bringing back of a lost forest, a forest that would have existed at a particular place a few thousand years ago, before human intervention. And by finding out the right kind of species, the potential natural vegetation, the vegetation that would have grown at that place a few thousand years ago, can restore a forest to its final stage of succession, the climax forest, within a period of 10 to 15 years. So we can do it on very small patches of land by finding out the right trees and planting them in form of seedlings and making them grow to become self-sustaining, maintenance-free forests in just 2 to 3 years. It continues to grow to become equivalent of a 100-year-old forest in just 10 years.
Fantastic, thank you. Can you tell me a bit more about the mission and the ethos behind the work you're doing?
Well, the mission is to bring back our entire lost forest. When we started, we wrote the mission as we are a company that is on mission to bring back our lost forest, and we do it by creating them. And the idea is, the ethos of our work is openly sharing of the methodology, openly sharing of all the standard procedures that we use to make these forests, and make sure that anyone and everyone should be able to use this method and make their own forest, irrespective of whether they are working with us or not. So 6 years ago, we were open source. We have video tutorials using which a number of people are making their forests. We are supporting a few tens of professional companies making these forests independently in their own geographies.
Can you tell me what are some of the challenges that you're facing in the work that you're doing?
Well, the biggest challenge is supply chain of the native species. And you would have heard this sentiment in other discussions also, that very slowly we are becoming aware of the native vegetation of different parts of the world, which used to be a forest long time ago. So unless we know our species, we will not be able to create an authentic forest. One challenge is to find out what used to grow a long time ago, like in areas like Jordan, which has become quite deserted now. It used to have oak trees, but you won't find an oak tree in Jordan anymore. So to find out what used to grow, and then sourcing the seedlings, sourcing the seeds and the plants of these species is something which is not happening that easily. And the nursery owners are mostly keeping ornamental species. So even if today you have the methodology to make a forest, let's say in France, you might not be able to source the native species that are native to France, to the area where you are making this forest. And because of that, this work can become a real big challenge.
And how are you rising to those kinds of challenges?
Well, in India now we have 5 nurseries which are dedicatedly collecting the seeds of forest trees from the forest. We have a seed bank in these nurseries, so we are conserving the seeds in form of the seed bank. And then we are documenting the know-hows of germinating these seeds in the the most natural way possible. Because we are making a natural forest, we use chemicals or through some artificial way, we have to grow them naturally. So this work is happening right now, but the overall goal is that you should be able to buy these species off the shelf just like any other gardening material, any other plant material, or the plants as you can buy them in gardening stores. So we have to reach that level when it comes to afforestation, because we are looking at really small sizes of forest, especially in urban spaces, and we are looking for making.
I have a few technical issues, perhaps.
Converting people hobby.
Sorry, I think we just lost you for a second. Can you talk to me a little bit in terms of cultural challenges, some kind of specific cultural challenges that you're facing about doing this kind of work in India?
Oh, yes. So India is a country of tree worshippers. We have been, I mean, if you look at the old coins, old Indian coins from Mohenjo-daro, 5,000 years old, you will see the engraving on these coins are actually diagrams of trees. Even the highest civilian honor in India, Bharat Ratna today, is actually leaf of people tree, the Bodhi tree, under which Buddha got enlightened. So culturally, we are very close to the forest and its trees. But at the same time, there is some fear that is associated with forest and its trees. And most of the times when I talking about making a forest in an urban space, maybe an apartment complex or a city center, I'm always asked, okay, so you're going to plant a forest. What about the snakes? Will there be snakes or not? And we always tell them that the snakes will be more seen in your homes if you don't plant this forest. Because unless you give the local biodiversity a habitat where they can go and find shelter and food, we will not be able to solve this conflict between man and the wildlife, especially in urban areas. So culturally, we have a huge love towards the forest, but at the same time, the scarier imagination of fear of a forest is also in back of the minds of people. But slowly it's changing. It's changing because cities like New Delhi is so polluted that people are able to overcome that fear, looking at the benefits, looking at the merits of what a forest in a space like New Delhi in the city center can do, where the air is so polluted that unless you plant these forests bang in the middle of cities, you will not be able to solve the crisis that these cities are in.
What kind of other questions do people in India tend to ask when you're doing this kind of work?
Well, carbon, the discussion about carbon is quite fashionable right now. So the moment we talk about forest, people start to ask, okay, how much carbon is going to sequester? And to be honest, we only as the mechanism or the machines that can digest carbon and lock them up in the soil. We look at our forest as living beings, as living, biodiverse, full of life of flora and fauna together. So for us, forest is almost sacred, and it has to be as dynamic as possible.
What does oh, sorry.
We are not avoiding the carbon discussion, but we are also spreading the word about that you have to start looking at trees beyond your janitors of human activity. It's actually way beyond that, and carbon sequestration is just one of the benefits that you get out of these beautiful living forests.
What does the decision-making process look like when you're deciding what to plant in the forest that you create?
All right, so the most important decisions that we have to take is what kind of species are we going to plant? The biggest mistakes that we have made in making of our forest is that we, by mistake, planted a non-native tree. And later we saw that this tree has dominated our entire region. And a number of seedlings of native trees growing around this non-native tree perished, they died. So in order to make our forest thrive, we have to find out the right species and mix them together very well. So we have to have a shrub layer, a small trees, a big trees, and really huge trees layer clubbed together in a way that we can fill up entire vertical space with greenery. So we don't play favorites. We don't say, okay, I like such and such fruit, so I'm going to plant only that tree, or I'm going to increase the percentage of those trees that I like. We make a forest which is multi-layered, full of diversity of all the species, and fill in the entire vertical space with greenery.
Fantastic. Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about the Mini Forest Revolution book, so how it came about and what features in the book?
Oh, yes. So the Mini Forest Revolution is a book written by an author based in France. And though she is American, but now living in France. And she has covered the story of Dr. Miyawaki's work in Japan, how it came to India, and because of its spread after we started the company, how so many people all over the world are making these forests. So it's a book of hope. It's a book of doers. It's a story of doers. And Paul Hawken, who is known for his book called Drawdown, has written the foreword. I have written the back cover blurb of the book. And reading the book, you can actually learn how to make a forest, how to make a mini forest. And you can also get all the inspiration that you need and the practical experience that, or examples of practical experience that all these forest makers in different parts of the world have gathered. So all that great pool of knowledge is confined in this little great book, which will be released next month. So I'm super excited about it.
Sounds like a great book. In terms of policy changes to support some of the things that we've talked about today, what are some of the things that you would like to see to help support your work better?
Well, if you look at the lawns in any city, I mean, United States, the third most area covered by any crop is the Mexican grass, using which they make their lawns. And they are just consuming chemicals, fertilizers, weedicides, a lot of water, a lot of fossil fuel is burned to mow the grass, and a lot of human effort is simply wasted just to maintain these lawns. If, as a policy, let's imagine, these lawns are banned and the mandate of the land is to plant the best possible natural combinations of species. So if you are in Spain, you're going to plant Spanish species which are native to the front yard of your house. That will not require any maintenance. That will not require any external input of water or any fertilizer. So by making changes like these, by bringing back the native greenery into our cities as a policy level once implemented, we can save a lot of public money. We can reduce the burden of chemicals that our land is bearing right now. We can save a lot of water, and we can also improve the quality of environment. The urban heat island effect can be mitigated by planting these native trees. A lot of more biodiversity can come back to the city. The birds, bees, animals that are scavenging for food everywhere can actually find their shelter and their food, their berries, the insects that they want right in the middle of a city. So it will be a very good urban environment if at a policy level we can get the grass lawns or the exotic grass, exotic plants banned, and native trees, native forest promoted for plantations.
You're doing such amazing and fascinating work. A question I'd love to ask is how would you like people across the world to kind of continue the legacy of your work and perhaps even create their own forests?
Well, so the methodology is 100% open. Anyone can just go through the documents and make their own forest. There is a company in France called Boom Forest. They have made many of these forests, and another company based in Nantes in France called Mini Big Forest. They have used our methodology and made these forests. So, and similarly, we have a company in US. We have many people have used the open source documentation and made their own forests successfully. Last year, we also released our video tutorials, using which, watching them and learning from them, number of people have started making their own forest as well. We have them in 3 different languages right now. We are also planning French and Spanish version of these video tutorials. So this is very easy, to be honest, and it's only becoming easier by the day. And we provide trainings and workshops. So if you really see a barren patch of land in your city, in your apartment building, in your house, in your community, start to imagine that it can be converted into a forest right in front of your own eyes in just 5 to 6 years. And all the know-hows are available for free for everyone. So it's really easily possible. And all it will need is an initiative from your side. And that change is bound to happen within a very short span of time.
Thank you so much. Well, that's a beautiful message to end on. Shubhendu, thank you so much for your time today and for talking to me.
Pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much, everyone.